What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news. And if you're wondering why I'm so excited right now, it's because the Detroit Lions have signed a player that, man, I wanted since the trade deadline. The Detroit Lions reportedly are signing cornerback Amik Robertson to a 2-year deal, so let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here, and yes, man, we are back with some Lions news. Now, of course, this is not my full breakdown of video, so I'm going to try to keep this thing short and sweet to get the news out to you guys, and we'll revisit this player a little bit later, but I'm telling you, I'm going to be fired up to revisit this player because I haven't really watched him since the trade deadline. So if you recently watched my cornerback video, you noticed that this player was not on that list, but he was a guy that was on my trade deadline list. So if you go back to when we did the Bleacher Report streams and we talked about the cornerback position, because we kind of did them like individually, at the cornerback position, one guy that I really liked was Amik Robertson. And I left him off that cornerback video kind of because I felt like maybe the Lions just weren't interested and I want to talk about some new names. I didn't want to just do the same list that I had when the trade deadline was happening because, I mean, that's just the exact same names over and over. I also mentioned him in a little bit in our trade deadline stream that we did over here. Those two, I still like Amik Robertson. He's been playing inside-outside. He'll probably play in the slot against us. No, he actually might play on the outside. I'm trying to think. I think Marcus Peters is going to be out, so he might play on the outside. As you can see, he was on my list. I tried to put a lot of different names on there that I had heard buzz about, but Amik Robertson wasn't a guy that I heard any buzz about. I actually just put him on the list. I liked the way that he played with the Vegas Raiders, and because I was doing shows with Bleacher Report every single week, we were making the weekly predictions, I was watching every single team's game back all year long. Every single game. And the Raiders, I had a lot of interest in just because I liked Aiden O'Connell, so I would just pay attention to them. And Amik Robertson, man, he caught my eye. The inside-outside flexibility, the undersized corner at 5'8". It's fun to watch this season. Coming off statistically his best season by far in the NFL, but now for back-to-back seasons, putting together 2 interceptions each year. This last year, he allowed a 62.5% completion percentage, as well as 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, and only allowing an 85.7 passer rating. And statistically, in our game, 2 receptions on 5 targets. What I loved about it was the mix between the inside and outside flexibility because of injuries that they had with guys like Marcus Peters. He played 100 snaps in the slot, but he also played at right cornerback as well this past season. Specifically, we saw that against us as well. So we're seeing the turnover start to come into play. He's a young cornerback, only 25 years old at this point in time, and I had to dig. And see if I could find some of my old notes on what I had written about Amik Robertson. And while my handwriting is absolutely terrible, and it's a struggle to read this. Of course, he was on the final year of his contract, which is why he was set to become a free agent this offseason. And this is a player that I had a lot of things that I liked about him. First off, one of my key notes, the third note that I wrote down in my notebook for this player was that he was feisty and willing in run support. And you would especially see that when he was in the slot position as well. So this is a guy that definitely comes in and gives us some versatility behind a guy like Brian Branch, which was necessary. One, our cornerback position is just very light. Not bringing back Jerry Jacobs to this point, Chase Lucas, or Will Harris. You have a very light cornerback unit in just terms of depth, so you had to fill that out. You also really don't have a backup slot cornerback behind Brian Branch on the roster right now. CD Deuce kind of could be that, but he's no longer here as of now, and you also don't have that now with Will Harris or Chase Lucas, who was a slot cornerback, or even maybe Jerry Jacobs, if you would argue that he could have slid into that spot. So we need that, number one. But number two, again, he also brings outside versatility just in a smaller frame. But that was one of the things that stuck out to me, and obviously we know Deshae Townsend's like, hey, you better be able to tackle, and this is a guy that absolutely can do that. A couple other notes that I had about him, because again, I'm just reading back to some of my trade deadline notes. Tight transition at the top of the route, half turn and pacing, very short steps, and twitch that he also would showcase at the top of the route. Recognition and awareness. Switch man assignment, so just kind of that football intelligence defensively. Flipping on to some of the negatives that I had him hit and miss a little bit in terms of matching the release. I thought that his feet could split, and when he split at the line of scrimmage, that allows you to get beat, especially on some of the twitchier receivers or maybe some of the speed releases off the line of scrimmage. So I thought that he could lose a step, specifically towards the inside, missing some fluidity to consistently match up from slot alignments. And of course, his size at the top of the route could be a little bit of an issue with a tad bit of stiffness that was in there as well. But you're talking about a twitchy player that has shown the ball skills over the last few years, has put 2 really good seasons back to back together, last couple of seasons, allowing a sub 100 pass rating, still a very young player, and I think he's the perfect role piece. At the time, we were talking about Amik Robertson coming in and being a starter on the outside, and I brought him up because I thought he's probably not going to cost a ton on the market. He's really not getting that kind of buzz right now, and the Raiders went through a lot of changes at their cornerback position just throughout the season, and I thought the Lions just needed help on the outside. They were willing to take in a smaller cornerback, but he could still prove that he could hang on the outside. I was like, maybe you don't have to give up much, and you could bring in a nice little player here. Well, now you bring him in, and I think ideally you're looking looking at him as kind of like a role piece, right? He could step in at slot if you need it. He could step on the outside. He gives you good depth. It's the Lions remaking the foundation of the cornerback room. And to me, that's clearly what their process has been this offseason. We're moving on from a lot of guys that we like. We're moving on, and we're resetting this cornerback unit. It's going to be Cam Sutton. It's Brian Branch, and we're starting from there. Mosley, welcome back to the squad. We didn't get to see you play, so he's kind of like a new piece. Also, now Carlton Davis, welcome to the squad. You're probably going to end up being a starter as long as you're healthy. And now you bring in a really nice backup piece that has played well over the last 2 seasons. He's on the upswing. If you guys know me, I'm fired up. Amik Robertson is a freaking Detroit Lion, and reportedly it's a 2-year, $9.25 million deal that's worth up to $10.75 million with incentives. So what? 2-year, essentially just $4.5 million per year. That could potentially kick a little bit higher. Again, it's not that big of a contract for a player that's on the upswing. This is a perfect depth piece that obviously from just my early notes, so there's no bias here to us signing him. I liked him then, and I like him now. Amik Robertson, you are a Detroit Lion, and I'm fired up to see that. He also made some big-time plays in some big-time games during the season. The other news that I want to touch on, because I'll leave it there, we'll revisit this player, of course, is that the Detroit Lions also apparently agreed to some sort of pay cut with John Cominksy, which does make a ton of sense. So yesterday they signed Marcus Davenport, a guy that brings a ton of flexibility that could at times play a similar role to John Cominksy, but he brings us a lot more of an edge rushing presence from what I've seen so far. John Cominksy, however, was kind of in a weird situation where it was like, okay, he's the guy with the most clear out on his contract where the Lions legitimately could save some cap space if they would just cut John Cominksy. He's on the back end of the 2-year deal that he received, a 2-year, $8.5 million deal. His cap number had risen to over $6 million cap hit this season, but he had a pretty clear out with not much dead cap. And it was like, I don't want to cut him, but if we were going to cut somebody because we need to save some money, John Cominksy would probably make the most sense. And that is still potentially an option for the Lions if they wanted to go that route. But from what we see now, it looks like the Detroit Lions took $500K from his contract that was unguaranteed, essentially made it guaranteed, and they took away $2 million from his base salary, and that's where the cap hit comes into play, which opens up $2 million for the Detroit Lions in cap space. So now you go from a guy that had a $6.2 million cap hit to a $4.2 million cap hit. You pair him along with Josh Pascal, also Marcus Davenport, and potentially a draft pick. One, it could be hard to find a role there. It's going to be a battle to have a role there. But also on top of that, this doesn't hurt the Lions in the future years in terms of just adding dead money. That does not happen. But it also allows him to stick around on the roster after coming off of what wasn't necessarily the best season for John Cominksy. So this seems to make a ton of sense for both sides. I'm actually really happy this gets done because I didn't want to lose John Cominksy. It just felt like an easy way to save money if the Lions wanted to go that route. They wanted to add a guy that could play at a similar position. So this seems to make a ton of sense that this would happen because that was really the one clear, like, this guy would make sense to cut. I don't want to cut him. John Cominsky's been awesome. But if there was a guy, it probably would be John Cominksy. But now it seems like you don't really have to worry about that. They could still go down that path because you'd have still only 1.7 in dead cap with a cut with 2.5 now million saved. But it's less likely that now it takes place. So I like to see that something was worked out there. So it seems like John Cominsky is going to be able to stick around for this upcoming season. And just a side little note, I did see yesterday that it was announced that Marcus Davenport signed to a 1-year, $6.5 million deal. I haven't seen the contract details. Maybe by the time you're seeing this, you're seeing them. But $6.5 million, that's a little bit higher than like the Mosley or, again, some of the other 1-year deals that we've given out, but it's still not like breaking the bank type of money. $6.5 million for that guy? Sign me up. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Pride, for watching,